Thanks so much for joining and watching this presentation. My name is Bradley Johnson. I'm coming to you today with some strategies for the charitably motivated that perhaps want to save some money on their taxes as well. You're going to want to stay tuned till the end. I can promise you'll receive some information that opens the door to furthering causes and organizations that we care about. Going to start off with a disclaimer here to keep myself in line with my compliance. This seminar is for information purposes only. Neither Life More Abundantly LLC nor its agents or employees are in the business of giving tax, legal, or accounting advice. Attendees should consult their own personal advisors to determine the appropriateness of any course of action. All right, a little bit about who we are here. We're independent financial strategists that contract only with insurance companies that undergo a very high bar of scrutiny. We specialize in wealth strategies for the charitably motivated, and we absolutely love aligning with causes that change the world for the better. And I got a little picture here of my young family, beautiful wife, and actually 2 daughters now. So this is myself, Bradley Johnson, president of Life More Abundantly. At the age of 19, I experienced a radical change in my own life. I went from having won over $43,000 playing poker to selling all that I had and traveling around homelessly, preaching the gospel of God's grace found in Jesus. My focus shifted from trying to build my own kingdom to being a servant to others and equipping them with the tools to make good decisions. Later on, I went and attended the University of Florida. I was heavily involved in leadership with a nonprofit called the House of Hope. It was a faith-based ministry that was for men coming out of prison and transitioning back into society. So it was really neat. I actually got to live there amongst them for about a year and a half and disciple them and grow with them as well. So I've led a variety of small groups within local churches. It was at Greenhouse Church back in Gainesville, Florida, and now currently Grace Community Church here in Lakewood Ranch. I earned my bachelor's degree in family, youth, and community science at UF with a minor in nonprofit organizational leadership before continuing on at Boston Institute of Finance. I'm also a certified family life educator. So a really good niche for me in working with the planned gifts and giving in amongst the nonprofits. I always like to tell people that I want to give them the information to make educated decisions. So I'm not here to sell products, I solve problems. What you do with the information that I give you and the insights that I give you right after that, that's up to you. So let's talk about the current state of affairs. I'd like to set the landscape. Okay, so what's going on today? So quite simply, you can read along, but the struggle is that the nonprofits have, across the board, it's fairly consistent. They don't have enough resources to respond to new opportunities. Whether it's the leadership transitions or changes in their respective environments, there's a great need for nonprofits. We see a sector survey here. It documented that for 6 years in a row, around 3 out of every 4 nonprofits reported a increase in their needs or in their demands for services. And taking a look at the political climate, as new lawmakers take their seats in state and local governments, the tendency for the politicians is to limit the resources allocated for the nonprofits because they'd rather fill the government budgets that continue to increase. And obviously with the recent election and a lot of political unrest going on, who knows? So at the end of the day, it's really up to the owner of the nonprofit to fund their own services. So if you look at this, what we have going on here is we have a growing need for the services of the nonprofits, and you have more and more constraints from the state and local governments providing funding to them. So you need more resources and more programs, yet there's less money available, again, to facilitate them. So again, who's responsible for bridging that gap? It's the nonprofit. This is where it gets really exciting. We're currently in the midst of the greatest wealth transfer our country has ever seen. So there's an estimated 41 trillion with a T dollars that's expected to transfer even in light of our current economic conditions. So even though the market's been up and down the last several years and interest rates are starting to creep up and there's unemployment, all that stuff, still you have $41 trillion that's expected to transfer here in the next several years. Again, that's an opportunity. So of that 41 trillion, 12 trillion of that is expected to go to charities. So the question that I love to ask you, to ask the nonprofit at this point is, of that 12 trillion, how much of that are you going to get? Right? Raise your hand if you want some of that. I hope you get some of it at least. So here's our opportunity. Now, for those that think that generational wealth transfer will automatically flow to their organization, it's time to think again. Without putting in the hard work in generating planned gifts, 90% of gifts will simply stop at a donor's mortality, which basically means this. If Grandma Susan, she loves to give to her church or loves to give to the City of Hope or the Red Cross, when she dies, it's highly unlikely that her children or her grandchildren have the same nonprofit notion that she had. So unless we do planned gifts, then the chances are that these gifts and these donations are going to completely stop. So it's interesting, only 5.3% of older Americans have made a charitable bequest commitment, while 33% are willing to consider such a gift. Again, there's a phrase I like to use, it's closed mouths don't get fed. Again, closed mouths don't get fed. So we have 5.3% of people that have actually made this charitable bequest, yet 33% are willing to do it. They just haven't been asked. So it's kind of like the analogy of the pretty girl in high school syndrome, right? So you have the prettiest girl in high school, and yet she sat home alone a lot on the Friday and the Saturday nights because everyone assumed that she already had a date. Right? So it just kind of brings us to that adage of just asking you shall receive. And that's what I think the message is that you can take away from this slide. Ultimately, only 10 to 12% of regular donors will die with any charitable estate provision. So again, I like to say that if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it with amazing accuracy. So again, the onus falls on the individual to plan, but it also really falls on us as advisors to let our clients know, hey, there's an opportunity to enhance what you already have going on for your respective charity or your nonprofit. And we can help you. We can facilitate the funding for the organization. We can do the legal documents. We can save you some money on your taxes. I've been working with professionals, attorneys, and CPAs and the like to make sure that our clients' objectives are met. So we have only 37% of those over the age of 30 saying that they're even familiar with the term planned giving. So the majority of people, they're not. Again, over 63% of people don't even know what planned giving is. Again, closed mouths don't get fed. So I think at the end of the day, while I love the phrase providing people information to make educated decisions, you gotta let people know, hey, this opportunity exists. And then let them tell you, yes or no, but don't assume that they're not interested, and don't assume that they wouldn't do it. They haven't even been given a chance. They haven't been given the opportunity. Well, why should we go after these planned gifts? What's going on here? 10 reasons why you need to pursue planned gifts. Number one, if you're not asking your prospects for planned gifts, someone else is. Who's going to be the first to ask? And eventually, someone else will steal your cash gifts too. Why? Because planned gifts come from the heart. Cash-starved times can be a great time for planned giving, and those who even dabble in planned giving eventually earn even 50 to 100% more than those who don't. Because typically, again, if you're going to give, you're going to be blessed enough to share. Number 5 here, I absolutely love this one. A typical planned gift is 200 to 300 times more the size of a donor's largest annual gift. Again, we'll talk about this in future slides about the utilization of insurance and how we can magnify gifts using this particular concept. 6, planned gifts do not affect the prospect's cash flow. They're very easy to give. They're very easy to receive. I'll show you how we work this. Prospects are eager to give and make planned gifts. They simply just don't know how to do it, and we'll show them how to do it. Prospects making gifts through their wills typically increase their annual support because you're going to want to not only help tomorrow, but also help out today as well. And really, anyone can make a planned gift. It's easy, it's simple to implement, and you'll see that right in the slide. The issue, though, is when. The top reasons that donors make planned gifts we're looking at here, 97% desire to support their charities, while an 82% ultimately want the gift to be used by their charity. So they want to enhance the charity's legacy because at the end of the day, it's all about the legacy, right? Will this organization be viable not only today, but tomorrow and for generations to come? And that's what planned giving is going to ensure, that it'll still be around. The top reasons that donors make planned gifts: 35% desire to reduce their taxes. So they get some immediate tax benefits when they do planned giving. You get to deduct your contributions that you make, or your donations rather, and you get a income tax deduction. 33% want to create a lasting memoir for themselves or a loved one. And you'll see there at the bottom, even 12% do it by the encouragement of their legal or financial advisors. So we have a fair amount of influence for them as well. So the solution again is planned giving. 62% of people want to sustain giving in their retirement. Others want to capitalize on a wealth event, such as a financial windfall. Maybe they're going to sell a piece of property, sell a business, inherit money. 27% of others say that they want to do it with a year-end bonus. So I'm not sure how reliable that's going to be, right? I wish that I'd get a year-end bonus one day that's so big that I want to give it to charity, but are you still waiting on that check there? So what are the three types of planned gifts? We have outright gifts that can be used, such as appreciated assets as a substitute for cash. We have gifts that return income or other financial benefits to the donors. And we have gifts that are payable upon a donor's death. What are the benefits of planned giving? Well, donors can contribute appreciated property and pay no capital gains on a transfer. Donors who establish a life income gift receive a tax deduction today. And gifts payable to charity upon a donor's death do not generate lifetime income tax deductions for the donor, but they are exempt from the estate tax. So the nonprofit organizations can plan for their future more efficiently, right? I like to think that, hey, if you know that you're gonna be able to sustain a certain program because you have money coming in the future. So give them the idea that, hey, look, if you know that you have 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, $20 million that's coming in the next, say, 10, 20, 30 years, they can plan accordingly. So here's how it works, right? Let's get into the meat here. Quick story though, before we get to the slide. A colleague of mine engaged in this particular strategy with a Los Angeles Children's Hospital. I'll tell you what he did. Last year, he gave the LA Children's Hospital $1 million. Now, for those of you listening, you may be like, oh, Brad, what a nice guy. What a charitable guy, $1 million. Yeah, $1 million, kind of, right? Here's the catch. I'll show you exactly what he did. He committed to pay $10,000 a year of premium to buy a $1 million permanent life insurance policy. He committed to pay this premium for 20 years. So $10,000 a year for 20 years, he's going to pay $200,000 of premium to the insurance company for this $1 million policy. Now, what did we do? We just turned a $10,000 check day one into a $1 million benefit for the hospital. It would take them 100 years of putting away $10,000 a year to give the LA Children's Hospital $1 million. Now, I don't know that he or you or I have 100 years left on this earth. And frankly, I don't know if I want to live that long, right? But here's the mechanism. It's really, really simple. Taking a look at the slide here, I'm the grantor, and I'm the premium payer, and I'm the insured. So I pay the premium directly to the insurance company, and I am the insured. Here's the one key thing to note in this design, because with other methods, anytime that you have to bring in the attorneys and the CPAs and the advanced planning consultants to draft up a trust to make this happen and to make it effective, it can get really complicated, and we could lose the gift altogether. So with this design, it's super simple. I'm the insured, and I pay the premium. That life insurance policy is owned by the nonprofit, and that nonprofit is also the beneficiary. So here's the catch, right? Because I have no incidence of ownership, because the nonprofit owns the policy, I'm able to deduct my premium payment. Now, guys, this is huge, right? This is very different from me buying a policy on my own that I own and that I'm the insured on, and just me naming the nonprofit as a beneficiary. Because in that scenario where I own the policy, I have incidence of ownership. So the key distinction here is that the nonprofit is not only the beneficiary, but they're also the owner. So now I'm able to deduct the premium payments from my taxes. Now, based on this flow chart, you see a little bit of different numbers than the scenario I had just given with the LA Children's Hospital. You'll see a $50,000 premium. So we got a bigger policy here. It's a $3 million policy, and it's structured over a 15-year gift. So it can be structured in any way. It can be designed with different numbers and scaled to different sizes. It's really based on what the grantor and the nonprofit desires. And the key here again is that the giver, look, he doesn't have to be hanging on by a thread, right? You might be thinking life insurance, thinking, oh, well, does it have to be someone that's like 70 or 80 so that they can get the money real soon? No, they can be 20, 30, 40 years old, right? So knock on wood, hopefully they're going to be on this earth for a while. And so our wish is that the nonprofit actually isn't going to get that $1 million check for quite some time, right? We want them to live a long, fruitful life and serve their purpose here on this earth. But because it's in a permanent cash value building policy, that policy builds cash value, that equity becomes income and it becomes available to the nonprofit to use should they need it today. So as an example here, let's fast forward 10 years. Let's say that nonprofit wants to create a new program in the hospital, or they want to create a scholarship fund, or they want to renovate a wing in the hospital, and they need some equity, right? So they can pull the cash value out of the policy. So whether they want to access those values 5 years from now, or they'd rather wait it out and receive a lump sum death benefit in 50 years, or anything in between that could happen, they have access to do so. So when I'm showing this, I like to start with the board of directors. We'll take 5 or 10, maybe 15 board members and say, look guys, let's raise $15 million for this organization today in this meeting. And oftentimes, right, they'll be looking at me like, how can we do that? How can we raise $15 million for this organization just today in this meeting? And I'll let them know, yes, we can do it because each one of you is going to buy $1 million policy and you're going to commit your 10, 15, 20,000, whatever the premium is, so that this organization is benefited from year to year. So it's super powerful because in this scenario, you don't need to bring in the attorney, you don't need the CPA. It's super, super simple. We have a nonprofit as the owner. And this allows us to do two key things, right? Number one, it allows us to enhance the gifts from the grantor. So I'm taking this $10,000 gift, which, you know, it would be well appreciated, I guess. But now I just turned it into a 7-figure gift. And here's the thing, right? This is some degree of vanity, granted. You know, we're giving money, and you know there is a nonprofit notion to it, and it's coming from the heart, right? But we're now in the circle of $1 million donors, right? So now I'm invited to the dinner with the $1 million donors. Did I write a check for $1 million? No, I didn't. But I have made that bequest. The organization is going to get $1 million from my family because of my commitment, because of my sacrifice, and I'm recognized as such. One of the other things that we have the opportunity to do is to get into the nonprofit and review their existing contracts and make sure that the nonprofit is getting the most bang for their buck and that these products are performing optimally. There's an associate of mine, he had the opportunity to do this with a local university, and he reviewed 30 or 40 policies they had in place, and he actually found a handful of them that needed some servicing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be managed, right? Because when you think about it, at the end of the day, the nonprofit, they're fantastic in their respective initiative, right? Whether, you know, what they're doing in the city, or maybe they're great at raising money, but they're not in the insurance business. They're not in the business of monitoring and managing these policies, right? But we are here at Life More Abundantly. So we can strengthen the relationship with the nonprofit by saying, hey, not only am I going to help you raise money utilizing this concept and bringing in new policies, I'll even review any existing policies you have or contracts that you have in place today, make sure that they're operating and functioning correctly, that they're designed correctly, and make sure that they're viable and in place. Let's talk a little bit as I go on here. I'm going to show you some case studies, but let's talk a bit about the cons, right? So what's the catch? Well, you know, the first thing I want to say is that typically people don't write bad checks to church, meaning that someone who signs up with this concept and agrees to give money annually to nonprofits, they're generally going to keep that commitment. But let's just say it's not a matter of sentiment, it's not a matter of desire, life happens, right? So maybe you get that, hey, when I signed up for this, my business was doing well, and now my business isn't doing so well, so I can't keep it up. Or maybe you get the, hey, when I signed up for this, I was making a lot of money, but I have an illness now and I can't work anymore. So let's talk about these things. So exit strategy number one, obviously, is that the nonprofit has the opportunity to continue paying that premium. So they can pick up the premium. They can say, hey, we're going to carry the torch here and we're going to keep this policy in force so that we can reap the benefits one day. Now, that's obviously only if the nonprofit is in a financial position to do so. Another option here is they can say, hey, we're just going to surrender the policy. So let's say that the policy has $200,000 of cash value in it. We can just surrender the policy and we'll take that to the bank. So that's always an option. Now, there is a third option here. The nonprofit also has an option to perhaps sell that policy in the secondary market. So let's say the reason that the premium payment can no longer be made is because the grantor has contracted some terminal illness, and otherwise this policy is going to lapse. And so rather than surrendering the policy and taking the $200,000, if it's $1 million policy, that policy could be sold in the secondary market for, say, $700,000 or $800,000. Now that nonprofit has increased the amount of money that they can take, rather than, again, just letting that policy lapse or surrendering it. So these are some of the kinds of exits. I guess the only way that the nonprofit doesn't make out with this scenario is if someone agrees to do this and then lapses the policy a year or 2 years, a few years into it, before it's had the opportunity to gain value and equity and really mature. So again, speaking of that in terms of the target nonprofit we're working with here isn't the one that says, oh my gosh, this is great, I have no idea how we're going to make payroll next month, can we implement this tomorrow? Right? So this probably isn't our target nonprofit, because again, we're utilizing risk pooling. So what I mean is, let's say we have 10 insured people that are utilizing this strategy for the nonprofit. Well, perhaps you have one that dies within a year, perhaps you have one that lives to full-blown life expectancy, then perhaps the other 8 are all somewhere in between there. So this isn't a strategy that's going to provide fruit in terms of bountiful sums of cash tomorrow. Typically, we're looking at working with nonprofits that have some level of financial strength. They're going to have the ability to stay with their doors open in the short term. As such, let's take a look here at a couple case studies and samples. We have man leaves $1 million bequest to community foundation. And here's another one, the Boston Globe. Longtime UNH librarian leaves $4 million to school, tiny town of Troy. And the former resident, $821,000 bequests at Windfall. You see this lady left millions of dollars to USC. And most of these articles that you read, what you may not know is that the money was through life insurance. So even in the news in Los Angeles, I think it was a year or two ago, Dr. Dre left over $100 million to USC. But it didn't say in the LA Times that it came via a life insurance policy. Again, Oprah, she made a big gift to an organization as well, life insurance policy. So they give, right? They give $100 million bequest, $50 million bequest, $10 million bequest. It's hardly ever cash. It's typically life insurance. And you can check out these case studies for a little bit more info. So I always like to say that there's 3 things that work in life, right? We've got people at work, we have money at work, and then my personal favorite, we have other people's money at work. And life insurance in general, is the ultimate example of that OPM, right? Other people's money at work. So that's why in that previous slide, it says, look, the planned gift can magnify the donor's annual gift by 100, 200, maybe even 300 times. That's not a stretch of the imagination at all, right? So how long would it take, or what kind of financial stream would it take to give an organization 1 million, 2 million, 5 million bucks? That's quite a bit, right? But if I can generate a 2 million, 3 million, or $5 million outcome with just pennies on the dollar today, why wouldn't you do it, right? So it makes a lot of sense. So moving on here, we have some of the anomalies in the insurance world with insurance policies that specifically benefit nonprofits. So there's some keys here. There's a little tidbit that I've found by working with nonprofits based on how you structure insurance that we can really take advantage of and run with. How does it work? Well, this particular contract that we're going to look at is issued by Penn Mutual. So it's interesting, right? There's a lot of carriers out there. There's a lot that'll work for the strategy, but here's the basic premise. Most people, when they think about insurance, what do they typically want? They want the biggest benefit, the most insurance they can get for the least premium. So they want the biggest benefit that they can get for the least premium. But we found with this particular concept is we want to take the most premium dollars we can and frame it into the smallest policy, thus maximizing the internal rate of return. So we're trying to get as little insurance as possible with the most premium. So let's see how this plays out here in real life. So we'll go to this illustration. So I'm talking to a nonprofit about plan giving, and the executive director of the nonprofit says to me, hey, you know what? He tells me, I mean, this concept sounds cool, it sounds great, but look, all of our funds, for the most part, they come from the government and state agencies. We do very little with the general public. As a matter of fact, we're sitting on a ton of money right now, and I'm the only employee. There's not a lot of room for your plan giving concept. So I pivoted my conversation. So plan giving may not very well be a strategy. You said you're sitting on a ton of cash. Where is it? How do you invest that money? He said, for the most part, literally, Bradley, it's sitting in cash. It's sitting in the bank. And as you guys know, nonprofits are typically very conservative with their investment allocations because they have to adhere to the prudent man rule, meaning that they're not going to take any amount of risk in investing their money. So I said, look, I've got something for you. I got a question for you. How much money do you have in the bank? He said, they've got about $4 million in the bank. I said, let me show you something. I'm going to tie this in to you being the sole employee and to you being a key man on the policy. How old are you? He said, I'm 45 years old. I said, okay, let me show you something. So I took $1.5 million of premium and I dump it into a policy one time, one payment of $1.5 million. So you're seeing here on the illustration in the fourth column from the left that the premium is $1.5 million. Now, as we're typically brought up as advisors, we're taught in this business, you'd see this one payment, you'd think, oh my gosh, we've MEC'd the policy, right? MEC meaning that we have turned this policy into a modified endowment contract. And now there's penalties and there's taxes associated with the distribution. So here's the anomaly, not only for the structure of the policy, but for that nonprofit. Here's the key, nonprofits do not pay taxes. So the fact that I MEC'd this policy is a moot point. The fact that the individual is under 59 and a half and he would ordinarily be subject to an IRS penalty over and above income taxes is a moot point. So you see here, $1.5 million year one generates a $1.433 million cash value for year one. So for the most part, virtually every premium dollar that's paid is accessible to the nonprofit year one. So for that nonprofit where liquidity is an issue, your money's still pretty much there. Now, that's not to say there's a negative yield, right? We do have a negative yield. We see that for year one, minus 4.42% in year one. But that is buying $4.7 million in death benefit. So here's my take to this guy, right? I can take the money that you have in the bank right now, simply we change the address of where it is housed, and I'll give you a comparable semblance of liquidity by buying a key man policy on you. And because you're a key person, and you said, you know, for this particular institution, for this guy, he's the only employee, that if something were to happen to him, then this organization is going to be in serious trouble, right? They need to find and they need to hire a replacement. Otherwise, it's just going to shut down, right? So now we can use that death benefit of $4.7 million to do just that. Now, taking a look here again at our graph, if we look at year two, we get the internal rate of return to 0.75%. So we're back in the positive year two. You got that? So I'd say that 0.75% is right in line with what you're going to find in the banking instruments, right? So that's about what you're going to get in like a CD or something, right? So you guys probably already know what CDs are. I affectionately call CDs certificates of depreciation because interest rates are so low. So, you know, you're not even keeping up with inflation, right? You're losing money on the third year. in this contract, the rate's getting up to 2.54% internal rate of return, 3.45% by year 4, 4% by year 5. Now, you tell me for a moment, where on God's green earth are you getting a 4% fixed yield compounded from an A paper carrier that where if the account owner dies, it's leveraged to a $5.2 million tax-free death benefit? You tell me where you can find that, right? It only gets better though. If you continue to look here, year by year, you're noticing that the cash value continues to grow. You're noticing that the internal rate of return continues to grow. You notice that the death benefit continues to grow. So in essence, what I've done is I've created a liquid high yield CD with a death benefit attached. So the catch here now is that you have to be healthy enough to qualify for it. But in this particular instance, all I need is a key person that has an insurable interest. And, we're going to find the healthiest, youngest person on the board to write this policy on, because we want to have the lowest cost of insurance to maximize the internal rate of return. Taking a look here at the history of the dividend yields. Now, as you're looking over this, where are you getting this yield these days in a fixed environment? Moreover, as you guys know, and this is just plain old vanilla whole life insurance. I can do this with an IUL policy if you want and likely get much higher rates of return, but the whole life is obviously going to provide you with the most predictable outcome. And again, the idea here is we can't lose money. So I absolutely love this. I love the phrase that life insurance is a non-correlated asset class, because that's exactly what it is. You experience growth of value that's free from stock market risk, free from real estate risk, free from business risk, all while maintaining liquidity of your cash. So I absolutely love it. In essence, a MECT life insurance policy, it functions like a fixed annuity. If you think about it, right? You have taxes on the growth and you have taxes on the distribution. But again, here, when we're looking at our scenarios, because that the nonprofit owns it, there are no taxes on the growth. There are no taxes on the distribution. So it's far better than an annuity. And there's a tremendous death benefit to factor in here as well. So someone might say, how consistent is this? So the reason I'm showing you this PIN contract is because, look, I love it. Look at the dividend history over the past 35, 40 years. 5.75 for a good period of time in the beginning. Over the years, 70s, 80s, you have high inflation. 70s, 80s, 11%, 8% yield. But even today, it's going on in the present time yielding over 6%. Now, can you guys beat these yields in the market? Can you beat these yields being more aggressive? Sure, maybe. But you guys all well know, again, using a fixed product these days, you're not beating this return and this level of with the financial strength from the issuing company. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So here's where I like to wrap it up with a nonprofit. If you continue to raise money the way that you've been doing it, if you continue to talk to your donors and provide them the opportunities that you've been doing the way that you've been doing it, and you just keep running your organization the way that you've been doing it, and think that all of a sudden you're gonna come into millions of dollars of bequests and that you'll have these legacy programs to ensure that your organization will last for generations to come, but all the while you're doing the same thing day in and day out. If you think this is going to happen, then what are you? And you'll say, hey, we're insane. And I'm going to say, exactly, you said it, right? So the idea is that we've got to do something different, like plan giving strategies and utilizing the anomalies and the things like these that I've shown you in the examples working with nonprofits. So again, I'm going after the board first. I want to speak with the board of directors. I'm going to go to the board first and make sure that they're on board, right? I'm going to try and sell them this concept first. I want them to put their money where their mouth is. So I'll say, hey, you love this organization. You're donating to this organization. I want you to help me raise $20 million with this organization. And I want you to write the first check, right? I'm starting there. And then we can start working with their donor base. And we can write out letters to their donors and invite them in to the legacy program. whether they want to organize lunches or dinners or functions that allow us to come in and speak. And I'll let them know, hey, look, here's the deal. We'll handle everything. We'll handle the presentation. We're going to handle the underwriting. We'll handle the issuing of the policies. We'll handle the maintenance and the service. That's my commitment to you. And you don't have to pay me a dime to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to give my time to help this organization. That's my value proposition. And again, as it relates to the anomaly piece of the accumulation of just having money sitting in a bank, it's really simple. I just want to talk to your investment committee. I want you to take a good look at your investment portfolio, and anything where you're not earning 4 to 5% in your fixed income side, I want you to take a serious look at repositioning to offset this money that you're losing to inflation, right? Like, I want you to take a serious look at changing the address at which this money is housed, because I can make the argument that I can get high yield with the lowest deviation by taking even less risk. So we've got all the liquidity that you want, the same as cash there, but then we're going to tie in a death benefit on the side as well to make it even sweeter. And hey, if you got other key man policies existing, we can eliminate the cost of those, and that's going to save you money as well. So that's really it, my friends. Thanks so much again for joining. I want to thank you for your time. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have as you're hearing out this presentation. Please feel free to email me here with any questions, or call my number here at 941-444-8035. If not, if you're ready to start implementing these solutions, I'm happy to get you rolling here and get started. Here, though, is to the most successful years that you've experienced yet, and the furtherance of causes that are far bigger than ourselves. Thanks again. God bless.